Cody Rhodes returns to WWE in the most complicated work in history. Stone Cold does way more than just a talk show segment. He also advertised his beer. Bianca and Becky steal the show and more. It's time for my review of WrestleMania 38 Night 1 Part B / Section 6A. In about 5 minutes. Remember to subscribe and enable notifications to always on for daily wrestling news videos over this packed WrestleMania weekend.
Support WrestleTalk!
Apart from a recap package of when Baron Corbin was sad for a few weeks, which is still the best thing he's ever done, absolutely nothing happened on the pre-show. It was just 2 hours of video packages and inane panel discussion, not hosting a single match. Which, you know what? I like. Let's finally move past feeling like we have to watch the pre-show in case we miss some super important match like the Dirty Dogs versus the Hurt Business. 4 hours of a main card is far more than enough. The main WrestleMania show opened with America getting its own entrance music, the national anthem, WWE getting its own entrance video, where Mark Wahlberg, the respected, serious actor of Transformers Age of Extinction, said the word stupendous, and even the stadium getting an entrance with the Dallas Cowboy cheerleaders doing their thing. The first match of WrestleMania 38 weekend went to the SmackDown Tag Team Championships of the Usos defending against Shinsuke Nakamura and Rick Boogs, meaning the Bloodline will likely neatly open and close the whole 2-night affair with Roman Reigns surely main eventing Part 2. Unfortunately though, this match never got to what it could be, getting cut short after 7 minutes due to Boogs tearing his quad and patella tendon while trying to squat both members of the Usos. Yeah, that'll do it. They're 2 adult men you're trying to squat. Apparently he'll need surgery and could be out between 6 to 12 months. The Usos retained by pinning Nakamura. Even if the match hadn't been derailed by injury though, it still mostly felt like a normal SmackDown match. Speaking of, next up came Happy Corbin versus Drew McIntyre, highlight of which was the video package where we got the clips of sad Corbin again. The bit where he talks about having to open the tin of beans on the ground is the best thing that man has ever done. This was another filler match, more to set Drew up for something big after Mania than serving any real purpose here. Moss got in Baron's way again, furthering their eventual split. Drew had a great comeback, including kicking out of Corbin's End of Days, one of the most protected moves in the industry, and hit a Claymore to win. McIntyre then tried to kill a guy, swinging his sword down at Moss, thankfully missing him because, you know, the murder, and sliced the top 2 ropes open instead, making for a fun visual. The first Raw match came next of the Mysterios versus The Miz and Logan Paul, who came out wearing a $6 million Pokemon card round his neck that he'd bought. A Pokemon card, kids, is what an NFT looks like in real life. It is also ultimately useless. It was the beginning of what I thought was an impossible task. I think it made me like Logan Paul. Paul was incredible here, working like a proper tag team with The Miz, distracting the referee, taking bumps off the apron, doing actual impressive moves, and letting his natural douchebag charisma fill in any gaps. In his best sequence, Logan hit the 3 Amigos, an unassisted kip-up, then a top rope frog splash on Rey Mysterio. The faces made a comeback on him, but then Miz stole a win. I was suddenly really excited. In this one match, The Miz and Logan Paul have become one of my favourite tag teams. So of course WWE broke them up immediately. Miz turned on Logan, presumably setting up a Miz versus Logan feud with Logan as the babyface. That will be an uphill struggle because his appeal is definitely in wanting his face to get punched in. Stephanie McMahon then came out to thank everyone for coming and to introduce WWE's new signing, Gable Steveson, who just raised his arms and then left. If he loves professional wrestling, he must be taking the Ronda Rousey approach of making it look like he's actually really bored by it. Then came the match of the night and probably the match of the whole weekend. Despite WWE's allergy to long-term feuds and the fans not really wanting Becky Lynch as a heel, both her and Becky Lynch have told a really solid 8-month story since SummerSlam. Before this match even began, this had the context, the drama, the star power of the night's main event. And then came 2 excellent entrances, Becky with her own Marvel opening sting just full of Becky Lynch clips, and Bianca with a marching band. The perfection continued throughout the entire match, with Bianca Bianca immediately going for a KOD, which Becky reversed into a man slam near fall, referencing her SummerSlam return that started all of this. Then Lynch tried to pin with her feet on the ropes, referencing every heel win Becky had over the winter. Becky's character work was sublime, obviously desperate to just get this over with to retain. The pace never let up, but it never felt choreographed. There wasn't a single rest hold. Whereas last year's Sasha versus Bianca match more felt charged with social history, this, for me, was far more effective, as it was driven by character and story, and just the two of them hating each other. Like when Becky legit just booted Bianca in the face. Lynch went for one more man slam, but Bianca flipped out and hit the KOD to become the new Raw Women's Champion. The right result, a fantastic match. Even with the nostalgia joys of Stone Cold's return, this should have main evented night one for me. There was no time to recover though, as Seth Rollins came out, complete with a pitch-perfect choir singing his Kingslayer as he awaited his mystery opponent. The production held on this perfectly, waiting for ages, building the anticipation, then cutting all the lights, hitting a load of pyro for "Here comes the money." Nah, I'm kidding. Cody Rhodes to WWE confirmed. Coming out to his AEW Cody Rhodes entrance music and his Cody Vader lift, but sadly without Arn Anderson and his gun, Cody Rhodes made his not-so-surprise return to WWE after 6 years. Gotta hand it to AEW, this is one hell of a work. Cody gave his weight belt to a kid in the front row, he's still a baby face, and then had a really good match with Rollins, playing into their shared father figures of Dusty Rhodes and Triple H trading pedigree attempts. But it was ultimately 4 crossroads and a bionic elbow that would win for Cody, because that finisher is not going to be super effective in WWE either. This was an incredibly surreal experience. And the tons of pyro, the presentation, the objectively huge pop Cody got from the crowd all felt like the first real big on-screen shot from WWE's main roster to AEW. It's interesting how much influence context has on how you perceive someone though. I love the debut, I love the match, but I must admit, the more I saw Cody in a WWE ring, the more I felt what I had invested in him sap away. Because rooting for Cody over the last 6 years was inherently tied to rooting for a man making it on his own, against the machine that disrespected him and his family. Suddenly that was no longer underpinning how I felt about him. He's brilliant enough to find a new appeal though. Just now it'll be a character story about working inside the machine for redemption. It's in WWE's best interests that they help him do that, as his success is the greatest tactical move they can make in their war against all elite wrestling. In true Cody style, his debut was immediately followed by a carefully curated burst of PR, where his official statement confirmed he's inked a multi-year deal with WWE, which was followed by big-name interviews with Variety and The Ringer, where he explained why he decided to leave AEW, saying it was the easiest decision I have ever made. It was just time for me to move on. I had wrestled everybody that I wanted to wrestle. Dude, they've had like 100 people sign recently. There's loads of people to wrestle. And that he didn't want to become a 15-time TNT champion with the stipulation that he could never wrestle for the world title. He also said one driving factor behind his WWE return was how Vince McMahon and Bruce Pritchard flew down to meet him, where he told them he had to be his American Nightmare character, to which Vince said, "Well, it's not broke. That's what we're buying." Aren't those words of confidence? Yeah, and Cody's American Nightmare character was definitely not broken over the last year in AEW. Vince does not watch Dynamite, confirmed. Cody made sure to put over the AEW team, saying there's no bad blood between them, which led to a response from his former AEW co-executive vice president buddies, the Young Bucks, who have updated their bio to read, "What the f***, I thought we were doing All In too." We then got the Hall of Fame inductees come out on stage, complete with a mini Undertaker entrance for Mark Calloway. This was the send-off he really deserved, not Survivor Series 2020. The official attendance was announced at 77,899, sure. And then we got the final pre-announced match of the night, Charlotte Flair versus Ronda Rousey. Unfortunately, These two never properly clicked. There was intensity in their exchanges, with Rousey's strikes and submissions clashing against Charlotte's wrestling, but there is no chemistry between them. It felt like a heel versus heel dynamic, and had a fraction of the emotional investment Bianca and Becky had. It felt like a long 20 minutes, and by the end it had become more Ronda versus Charles Robinson, who first counted 3 off a Piper's Pit until he saw Charlotte's foot on the ropes, then got bumped into the corner so he missed Charlotte tap out to an armbar. Charlotte followed that confusion, getting the 3 count off a big boot. The match was fine, but what was far more disappointing is the thought that this feud is going to continue. Then with 45 minutes left on the night, Kevin Owens came out for the KO show Hometown Heat special. He ragged on Texas until Austin's glass-shattering entrance interrupted, and hot damn, I was totally worked by the nostalgia pop. Austin didn't look that old. It must be a bald head and goatee thing, because Goldberg doesn't look that old either. Luke's freaking 58. Stone Cold milked his entrance, even adding in his doom buggy, and then sat down with the interview about whether Texas is good or not, which was all a ruse for Owens to challenge him to a no-rolls-barred match, thinking he'd be easy pickings because he's old and has so many injuries. Austin agreed, and we got a legit match. Initially it was kinda slow. Mudhole stomps, punches, pretty much Sting wrestling in a t-shirt back in TNA. But then Austin became Sting, wrestling on weekly TV on AEW. He took a suplex in the crowd on the concrete floor, he put Owens through a table, they brawled up the ramp and hit more suplexes up there. Ultimately, KO hit himself in the head with a chair by mistake, and Austin hit a stunner to win. Which then, in true WWE branded content style, became a 10-minute advertisement for Stone Cold's Broken Skull beer, where he just kept drinking cans while the camera lingered on the beer's logo. Byron Saxton got another stunner for good measure, at least this time he wasn't kicked in the dick. This was undoubtedly fun, and parts of it made me feel like I was a teenager cheering for Austin again. But I'd be lying if I said this was executed to the fullest of its potential. If you knew Austin was going to wrestle, this could have been an actually proper feud based on KO wanting to kill his legend, rather than a lazily hashed together script on how Canada is better than Texas, meaning it ended up being nothing more than a superficial pop. What did you think of WrestleMania 38 Night 1? Let me know in the comments. Cody's return, the Austin main event, and the show-stealing Bianca versus Becky match were 3 incredible highlights, enough to make this a thoroughly sports-entertaining show. Rousey and Logan Paul added mainstream star power too. This was a very fun WrestleMania, so I'm giving it 80%. See what Adam Blampier, Luke Owen, and Andy Datson thought by watching their live reactions on the WrestleTalk podcast channel.
There it is!
They've done it!
There it is! He's actually got the full thing!